Koukoulas from Market Economics. Stephen, people seem to agree we're going to be around this sort of 10% mark from the initial people out of work from coronavirus. How confident can we be in this expectation? Is there quite a big sort of parameter, certainly compared to normal predictions?
Look, it's going to be a high number, and there's no confidence at all in any of these forecasts. We saw the Treasury numbers come out overnight and post the job seeker program. They're forecasting unemployment to hit about 10% during the June quarter. Obviously, the figures that come out Thursday are for the month of March, and they probably won't capture those queues that we saw around Centrelink offices a few weeks ago. We've probably got to wait another month or two for them to show up. But basically, the current guessing game for economists, including at the Treasury, is how high will unemployment be before we can be confident that there's a peak.
Yeah, so we'll wait to see from that peak. The question down the track, once restrictions are eased and so on, is whether there'll be this so-called snapback. The language from the Prime Minister appears to have changed on that. But is there a bit of a difference? I mean, if we can get restrictions eased, this is an economic shock really like no other we've experienced for a very long time, because the nature of it isn't to do with the underlying economy. The problem is, what are the ongoing impacts on the US, for example, and how they impact Australia?
Oh, indeed. And things like international travel, so tourism, which is so important for our economy, foreign students coming here, we're seeing with the universities under severe financial stress right now, that we need to see the global economy back on its feet and the virus beaten for us to get the benefit of those really important parts of our economy, let alone some of the other manufactured and resources that we export around the world. And if the world economy is weak, if it's the one that's the laggard in the whole economic cycle, then our export sector is not going to be as competitive, because there's simply no demand for our products. So I think the global economy will be important to us. But as you touched on, easing the restrictions when we're confident that the health officials are saying that it's okay to do so would really be an important part of that snapback. And if it's not a snapback, well, then a return to some form of reasonable economic growth.
Just to pluck out tourism, we know it's a huge driver for the economy, jobs as well. But if the borders are still up for Australians, we know we're huge travellers and we often go overseas. Can we just transfer tourism around Australia? Is there any estimate on how much we spend versus what others spend here, whether we can roughly replace it?
Yeah, look, that's a terrific point. And I think given how we've got a lot of pent-up demand, that people are obviously getting frustrated being at home and all those other concerns that come with the virus. And look, we've got to keep doing that, of course, to sort of get over this problem. But I'm wondering whether a holiday within the Australian borders will be the thing that picks up first. I suspect it will, because, again, if we've quarantined ourselves sufficiently that we're not getting any significant input from foreigners coming into Australia spreading the virus, and if we've been able to contain it domestically, then I dare say one of the things that will open on the tourism side will be us being able to drive to our favourite beach, or to jump on a plane even and go to a little further afield. So maybe domestic tourism will be one of the areas that benefits. So instead of going to Bali or California or Europe, we're going to be going to Queensland, Tasmania and WA and South Australia. It might be that sort of thing that comes out of this, which again would be good for our domestic economy. But again, I don't think it's still got the bang for its buck that foreign tourists have coming here.
Right, so it might fall a bit short. I guess there are a few countries where you have such diversity of holidays when you mention those destinations. Is the other factor of this Virgin Australia, if it collapses, a lot of people's flight cancellations, a travel bank and so on goes, frequent flyer points, is that a consideration government should have around keeping it, or is that too marginal to factor into a pretty big decision?
Oh, those things, losing your frequent flyer points and a couple of your tickets, not the end of the world. I don't think that's the concern. I think what we do want to see is a competitive airline industry. We want to see a couple of major carriers on the major routes around Australia and even internationally, to a point where we do see Virgin surviving. I think it's very, very important that we have a little bit of competition in the airline space. We know that the business route between Sydney and Melbourne is one of the most profitable, one of the busiest in the world, in fact. So we want to see some competition there, because, of course, the risk is if you've only got one major player, you get prices being a little higher and perhaps you get the quality of service being a little bit lower as well. So I think it's important that we don't let the health problem that's confronting us right now spill over into the destruction of a couple of firms that were probably doing okay before the virus came along.